to start a hedge fund even if you have no experience.
So just knowing your niche, knowing where you sit in the industry is critical to understanding what strategy would work best for you. We trade thousands of times during the day. And so they have to be products that are traded often throughout the day as well. You need to be able to have all of the infrastructure and setup in order to process data. Where are you getting your data from? Be able to turn that data into actionable strategies, signals is what we call them in the marketplace, and then be able to have a way of placing those trades. There's a lot of investors who purposely invest in what we call emerging managers, which are either, less experienced managers or newer managers that are coming aboard. And so that's just getting support in, with those types of investors at the beginning was very helpful for me.
My guest today is the 29-year-old Christina Qi, who started her hedge fund when she was 22. And now she and her partners trade up $7.1 billion with a B per day. You probably think she must be the daughter of a big Wall Street fund manager to be able to achieve the success she has today. But you'd be surprised to know that her parents were immigrants from China and waited tables at Chinese restaurants. So she definitely didn't grow up rich. And she started the hedge fund with her two partners with $1,000 while they were in college. And today, she's going to tell you about the exact 5 steps you can take to start your hedge fund or any startup business for that matter today. I'm your host, Kiana Danial, and you're watching the Invest Diva movement. We're moving towards helping 1 million moms start investing on their own by the year 2025. Let's go say hi to Christina Qi. I'm super excited to have you on the Invest Diva movement today. We were just chatting before and we found out that you knew me from my Japan days. Oh my gosh.
I'm totally starstruck.
It's like, what? Nobody knows. Almost no one knows I used to be in Japan. So you actually remembered my name somehow from TV and you're like, oh, I knew you. So that was pretty cool. But now look at you. You are here. You are a hedge fund manager. You are trading $7 million per day, which is amazing. And you're under 30.
Yeah, I'm turning 30 pretty soon though.
That's the best decade of your life. So the question that I believe our audience, and even myself, because I never worked at a hedge fund, and people tell me, why don't you create a hedge fund? I'm like, it's just too much hassle. I don't want to do it. I just rather just invest and be an entrepreneur. So it's a different kind of entrepreneurship, hedge fund for sure. So I'm super curious to know how to start a hedge fund. And you told me you have 5 quick steps. Yep. And you also have 5 mistakes to avoid that we're going to do in a different interview. But today we're going to talk about 5 steps to start a hedge fund. So please take the stage.
Okay, so I'm just going to jump right into this because everyone Googles how to start a hedge fund. All the resources suck on the internet. So I'm just going to tell you kind of briefly the 5 most important things you have to have. So the number one thing that people actually overlook is having a team, because starting a hedge fund is not a solo endeavor. You can't possibly do this alone, even if you had all the money in the world. So having either co-founders or employees is absolutely critical to kind of getting started. So finding those right people who believe in your idea just as much as you, that's the first validation you can possibly get in your business and in your
I'm going to stop you right here. First of all, that's absolutely true. Even with any business, you want to have a team. I made the mistake of not having a team for 8 years. It took me a lot longer to get where I am than I would have. But what kind of people, what would the co-founder do for the business?
Yeah, I mean, you need all kinds of roles: a CFO, a CTO, a CEO, COO. So all the different roles that kind of play into any kind of other company as well. So you kind of need that similar stuff in a hedge fund as well.
So, but you are going to need money for that. So how does that work exactly?
That is number 2, which is, number 2, which is basically you need to have capital in order to, number 1 is pay all of your employees and, pay for your office space if you have one, or any other expenses that you need. But then on top of that, in order to run a fund, the business model for hedge fund is you're managing other people's money and trading that in the market. So you need what's called LP capital in order to trade. So that is also I think it's the number one hardest thing to get is raising money, especially if you don't have a track record like me. But it's possible. If I can do it, you can too.
Right, because you're so young. So you have had to build up the track record and then decide to go on your own. So people believe in you, and then they kind of decided to invest their money with you and give you the fund, right?
Yep, exactly. There's a lot of investors who purposely invest in what we call emerging managers, which are either, less experienced managers or newer managers that are coming aboard. And so that's just getting support in, with those types of investors at the beginning was very helpful for me.
I'm pretty sure that you can totally do another video on how to raise a fund. I'm not going to go there right now because it's going to distract from how to actually start the hedge fund. So what is the next step to get started with a hedge fund?
So yeah, the next step is finding all of your service providers. So what I mean by that is lawyers, accountants, auditors, administrators, compliance people. You need like a huge team of people who they don't have to work for you full time, especially because most of us don't have the budget to hire all of them, but you have to outsource pretty much all of these services to get everything kind of up and running, get all the stars to align at once so that your fund, the legal entity and the accounting and the expenses and the audits and everything else is all mishmashed together at the end of the day.
So this sounds super complicated. I want to ask, before we get to step number 2, why? Why would you even start a hedge fund? So you trade right now with $7 billion per day. May I ask you how much of it goes to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that is also coming up with the business model of the fund. And so the business model is what fee structure do you want to take home? And in this hedge fund industry, the kind of common thing that people like to say is 2 and 20, which is a 2% management fee, and then a 20% either performance fee or incentive allocation, meaning that if we do make a positive performance throughout the year and beat our benchmarks, we take home 20% of that. And then 2% we would take home no matter what. Our fee structure is weird in that we're actually 0 and 40 on average. And so meaning we actually don't take home any management fee. All of the money that we do take home is based on the performance of the fund. So on a good year, we take home 40%, which is a huge chunk. And we have had bad years like every fund. On a bad year, we take home nothing, which actually sucks, by the way. So it's a riskier business model. And it's good for, I guess, someone like me where I'm like risk taking. I'm still young and willing to kind of take that, in terms of making a lot on a good year and making nothing on a bad year. But, for other kind of managers, depends on your strategy. It depends on how much you're managing and how much risk you're willing to take.
So quickly here, because you're so young and you founded the hedge fund, with your team, did you decide to go with older members or like everybody was your age?
Yeah, so hiring is a huge challenge, of course. And we at first thought, okay, let's hire like all these older people who kind of, no offense, they look like Warren Buffett, which is great, by the way. Like I love Warren Buffett, but just hire a bunch of folks who are of that generation is what I mean. And that was great. We had them onboarded. And when we launched the fund, we were actually losing money. And I was like, wait, what's going on? And we talked to them and they said like, look, we traded these strategies back in 2008, back in 1996, and they were great. And I'm like, dude, it's 2016, it's 2018, right? Like we're in modern times now and times have changed and those strategies died back with the decade, they died a long time ago. And so we kind of realized we need to actually have more diversity on the team. Let's hire some younger folks with the latest frameworks, the latest technologies, the latest kind of strategies and techniques, and brought some of those folks on board. And so combined with the experience of the older folks, combined with the technology and the mindset of the younger folks, we finally were able to kind of find our own niche in the markets and really build something that was a lot more successful than previously.
That's amazing. All right, so let's get to step number 2 then.
Oh man. Okay. So the next step after that is you need to just come up with your strategy. And the strategy itself, that actually for us came towards the end. We already knew, that high frequency trading, we've been doing it for some time, but in order to build the strategy, we had to spend a lot of time just finding service providers. There's so many other steps, raise the money, find the service providers. And then finally, when it came down time, now we could finally go work on the strategies. And so that's like your investment thesis. What makes you different from Goldman Sachs and all the other hedge funds and banks in the world? And so just knowing your niche, knowing where you sit in the industry is critical to understanding what strategy would work best for you. And then also knowing your background, my weaknesses. My weakness is I'm young and I don't have 40 years of experience in this space, but then using that to my strength. My strength is that I know technology. I know the latest developments in, machine learning or AI in finance. And so knowing where we have an edge was also good for us to position in terms of our strategies, in terms of our edge and our niche in the industry.
Do you use AI in your strategy?
That's a really good question. We get that a lot, actually. So we actually technically don't use AI. We do use some machine learning, so like linear, nonlinear regression, a little bit of deep learning in the strategy selection process. But the strategies themselves, because we're high frequency trading, it's actually really simple. Surprisingly, mathematically, it's just buy low, sell high, very kind of simple strategies like that. So, but yeah, like it is something we use, I guess, to an extent, but not in the areas that people expect us to.
I'm going to get into your strategy a little bit. So what exactly do you trade, and is it fully automated?
Yeah, so we trade primarily Delta One products. So we started off with US futures in CME actually, and then moved from there into start doing options, swaps, a little bit of fixed income, a little bit of US equities, pretty much like every other product out there. FX as well. We went into FX a lot. So we do a lot of the most commonly traded products within those markets because we do depend on volume a lot, just given how often we're turning over our portfolio during the day. We trade thousands of times during the day. And so they have to be products that are traded often throughout the day as well. And so we do target pretty popular products within all those markets and then go from there. And then in terms of strategies, stat arb and market making are the traditional kind of strategies in our space that we do as well.
Right. And before we get to step number one, I wanted to ask you, who is your target audience?
Oh man. So for target audience, we, in terms of like the types of LPs, we have a mix of family offices and institutions primarily, but I would say the majority are family offices who have invested in high frequency trading in the past and know what we're doing as a business. And so it's scary when we talk to some folks who aren't as familiar with the industry, there's a lot more hand holding, and a lot more education we have to do. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's just not worth it in terms of, just because they're not as experienced as an investor. And a lot of it is that relationship you have with your investors, right? That relationship is so critical to kind of everything in this space. And if you have a bad year, will they all pull out and leave you forever? Or will they keep with you and have faith in you? And so yeah.
Right. And I feel like this is kind of different than hedge funds that are mainly longer term, because like with that, people, especially during 2008, people have learned that if you wait it out, you're going to be okay. But when you're doing high frequency trading, you're like, this is day trading. Why are you not returning? So it can be a little bit tougher. So why did you choose the strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. The first thing on our end was it was very heavily reliant on technology. And we realized that there weren't a lot of strategies in our space like this that could really take advantage of the technologies that we were using at the time. And so it was a very as much of a tech play as it was a strategy play. And just kind of realizing that we have this unique tech. Why not just use it and use it to our advantage? And so that was the biggest reason why we chose these kind of strategies. They're fast, they're predictable, and because we're trading thousands of times during the day, I go home every day knowing how good or bad I did. For better or worse, some days I do really poor, and I go home being like, oh, that wasn't a good day. But at least I know, rather than having to wait, the cycle of feedback is great. I think in trading in general, right? I love, probably for you as well, we both love this industry because exactly the numbers just speak for themselves and exactly how good or bad you're doing. And it's a great feeling when you're doing a good job. And so I absolutely love that and love this industry for that reason.
Right. I mean, so I think that's the difference between, because yes, that's what comes with age. I used to love trading. And then as I got older and became a mom, I'm like, nope, sorry.
Yeah.
I switched to investing. So, but when it's fully automated, I'm sure it's kind of different. So what is the last and final step in starting up a hedge fund?
Infrastructure. You need to be able to have all of the infrastructure and setup in order to process data. Where are you getting your data from? Be able to turn that data into actionable strategies, signals is what we call them in the marketplace, and then be able to have a way of placing those trades, whether that's through a broker or, directly with the markets, whatever it is that you want to do. You have to have some way of executing and placing those orders in the marketplace. And so getting all of that stuff set up is also critical in order to just be able to set up your company, essentially. So that is also probably one of the most important steps in order to, everyone has to do that in order to start a fund.
So do you basically park your fund in a different broker or an exchange, or do you have your own platform?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have our own trading platform we built. And so what we do is we get something called direct market access or sponsored access with the exchanges, which means we will, and when we're placing these trades, because we care about speed and latency, we bypass a manual broker and we actually have access directly to the exchange instead. And so that's just what we do given our strategy, but you don't have to, no fund, has to do that. It's just something you want to do if your strategies are more latency sensitive.
That's super. Oh my gosh, that was very overwhelming for me. And kudos to you for actually being able to make it happen. I do. And I want our audience to know that. I mean, this sounded a little bit overwhelming, but you've done it. And your story is super interesting because your parents were immigrants from China and you didn't come from money. Now you were saying, okay, funding is super important. Having money is super important, but you didn't come from money, did you?
I didn't. So my parents made the minimum wage, working at a restaurants, cleaning tables when I was growing up. So I grew up inside Chinese restaurants after school because that was where my parents were working at the time. And, so I feel really lucky. I think it really is for me, they call it the American dream. And I had so many opportunities just growing up and being able to go to school, get an education. And really for me, education made a huge difference to, so empowering to learn about finance. I actually studied pretty much finance. It's called management, but very similar. I studied finance during undergrad, essentially, and learned about how the markets work and how to start trading strategies. And, today it's gotten even better because now we have tools like Robinhood, where literally anybody, even if you're a teenager, you can just get an account literally in seconds, download the account and get started in minutes. And, it's just so amazing to me because it's so empowering for even younger people to start to learn how to interact with the markets, how to trade and to participate in, kind of the global economy, which is just so exciting. So I just absolutely love it. I consider myself so lucky and privileged to be here and to be talking to you today and to get to talk about finance and our work, which is just so awesome and exciting.
It's super amazing. As you said, this is really exciting times. It's different than back in the day, as you said, even, the Warren Buffett age where only select number of people were actually investing, whereas people are becoming a lot more financially literate. Information is available everywhere and anybody can start investing, which is what excites me and what is exciting you. And I hope you can pass on the torch you're, a woman in the industry making it happen. And I'm super excited about what you're doing and your mission. And I know that you have a book coming up as well. So we're going to talk about that in the next episode we're going to do with you. That's going to be about the 5 mistakes to avoid when starting up a hedge fund. So you guys, if you watch this right now and you loved what you heard, but you were overwhelmed and you're like, oh my God, where to get started? What mistakes to avoid? Tune in, make sure that you subscribe and like this video, interact with us so it actually comes on your feed next time that we publish the video with Christina. And I'll see you guys in the next episode of the Invest Diva Movement.
I actually did see you on NHK when I worked in Japan, which was over a decade ago. And so, yeah, which is really, really funny. And then I was like, oh my gosh, it's actually you.
How would you even remember my name? that in itself is
yeah, because it's so rare, right? To see a woman in Japan, a foreign woman, just so many, finance and just topics that are like that, right? And so yeah, that was why I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
I did not expect that. Nobody knows that.